part of the world.
Mitakuye Oyasin, my Lakota brothers say, we are one. Another day ends. That's good. But now, another night is beginning. And that's bad. The nights are worse. The days just happen to you. The nights you've got to imagine, to conjure up, all by yourself. They're the stuff of your own nightmares. The lights go down, but they never quite go out in here. Shadows lurk everywhere. Shadows within shadows. I'm one of those shadows myself. I, Leonard Peltier, also known in my native country of Great Turtle Island as Gwarth Ilas, he that leads the people. Also known among my Sioux brethren as Tate Wikuwa, wind chases the sun. Also known as U.S. prisoner number 89637-132. In the shadow of the night. Sometimes in the shadowed night, I become spirit. The walls, the bars, the gratings dissolve into light, and I unloose my soul and fly through the inner darkness of my being. I become transparent, a bright shadow, a bird of dreams singing from the tree of life. I am an Indian man. My only desire is to live like one. Thank you very much.
Well, here I'm supposed to be saying a prayer and welcome you and play some flute, so I guess I'll get to that right now. But I'd like to thank my brothers from the land of Amaruka, the land of Amaru. And just to let you know, the things that are shifting here in the Western Hemisphere as it may be, and I'd like to welcome those of you who will go report wherever you have to report. But thank you for coming, whoever that is, and usually there's one or two of you that come and go report. We're not as dangerous, and you're not as dangerous either to us. But that man is dangerous on the wall, right there. I always wonder about what's going to happen when he gets out. What are they so afraid of? That's the big question. Of one indigenous man, is because will the energy then spread out among all peoples and we all become conscious? Well, it's happening anyway, so I think they should just let it free.
Another performance by Dave Lippman.
This song from a little bit further south Dakota, down by Arizona. There's so many stories. There's a story for every part of the country, and probably a song goes with each one. Think of it this way. They come to your door, they say you must move, and they will prove it. That can't happen here, you say. This is the USA. Oh, but it's not the same for those who were here before Columbus came. 1923, the tribal council came to be to represent the Navajo of the big mountain soil. Causes of the council's birth will tell you what the council's worth. The council was formed by Standard Oil. They came to conquer, possess and destroy, steal land and livestock, livelihood and joy, rape and destruction of the Mother Earth. When the water is poison, what's it worth? Natural law says to live with the land and keep it for a daughter to hold in her hand. For those who fence and confine it, who steal it in order to mine it, all I can say is Mr. Relocation. Shame on you. To help the Indians, to help themselves, sounded like a noble goal. Until the lawyer for the relocation turned out to work for Peabody Coal. Money-grubbing politicians, they all got ambitions to turn traditions into their opposites. Even the commissioner said the relocation reminded him of a place called Auschwitz. To live a life of fear, it is not pretty. Think about it. Whatever happens here will happen in your city. Do not doubt it. The land is the answer. The land is the cause. You try to break our lives, we'll have to break your laws. To those who fence and confine it, who steal it in order to mine it, all I can say is Mr. Relocation. Shame on you. Thank you so very much. See you a little later.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming out this evening. I actually drove in from Buffalo. I left at 9 o'clock. I didn't get here till 5:45. But I'm just going to cover the Freedom of Information Act, the Clemency petition, and the beating that Leonard suffered in January of this year at the Waymart facility, which is just east of Lewisburg, where Leonard's currently incarcerated. Just to give you a little background about me, I'm a solo practitioner in Buffalo. I'm also involved in democratic politics in the city of Buffalo. I work for the Buffalo City Council president. I've been doing that for a number of years. Prior to that, I worked at the Erie County Legislature. But since 2001, and can everyone hear me okay? I've been coordinating efforts to obtain Leonard Peltier's files from the FBI under the Freedom of Information Act. And for those who might not know what the Freedom of Information Act is, or it's more commonly referred to as FOIA, it was a federal statute that was passed in July of 1966. In fact, Lyndon Johnson signed it into law on July 4th, 1966. The law has been amended several times since then, but this law allows anyone to request records from any agency. You don't have to give a reason for requesting the records, and there's no special forms and what have you. You don't need an attorney to request these records. Now, in theory, the government, whether it be the FBI, the CIA, or whoever, in theory, they're supposed to give these, or provide the sought-after records within 20 working days. And there are exemptions in the law. There's a B1 exemption, a national security exemption. There's also a B7 exemption, which allows an agency to withhold information if, for example, it would disrupt an ongoing investigation or reveal the identity of a confidential source or sources. Now, how have we used FOIA in Leonard Peltier's case? We submitted FOIA requests to various FBI field offices around the country. We submitted requests to the Minneapolis office, the Milwaukee office. These two offices were most important because the Milwaukee and then later the Minneapolis office became the office, these were the office of origin for the Resmers investigation. Now, Resmers is what the FBI captioned its investigation into the shooting deaths of Agents Kohler and Williams. They never investigated the death of Joe Stuntz, who was also killed on June 26, 1975. So we submit these different FOIA requests to the offices we thought the FBI would have records relating to Leonard Peltier and Resmers. And we were, like I said, most interested in Minneapolis. We send the request in, we got stonewalled. I won't go into all the details now, but we ultimately filed suit in federal district court. Now, the statute allows you to bring suit in one of three locations: where the requester resides, the District of Columbia, or where the records are located. We opted to bring suit in Minnesota for, actually the main reason is we thought we'd get a more progressive or liberal judge, if there's such a creature on the federal bench. So we bring suit in November of 2002. The government immediately moves to stay the case. Now, these requests were submitted in August of 2001. We wait till November of 2002 to bring suit. The government immediately moves to have the case stayed, and they ask that it be stayed until December of 2005. They claim they were understaffed and overworked. So the court granted that motion. Eventually, we were able to argue the case. The government was ordered to release records in 90-day intervals, and they were withholding many, many pages of documents. The Minneapolis office alone has 90,000 pages of material. Nationwide, there's 142,579 pages relating to Leonard Peltier and Resmers. Now, that's a very interesting number when you consider when Leonard Peltier was tried in April of 1977, the government merely turned over 3,500 pages of material to defense attorneys. So they weren't able to adequately prepare their defense. So the government was really, it was just bizarre, some of the arguments that they raised during the case. They said they couldn't release many of these documents because it would hamper the nation's war on transnational terrorism. The district court upheld that claim of exemption. And I would note these exemptions are permissive, not mandatory. Disclosure, not secrecy, is the dominant feature of FOIA. The other exemption the FBI made great use of was the B7D exemption. That was the confidential source exemption. And in the Resmers case, the sub-N file is the informant file. There's 11,000 pages in the sub-N file in Minneapolis. The court allowed the FBI to withhold most of this material. In fact, practically all of it. In addition, the FBI claimed exemption for the amount of money spent on confidential sources that were used against the American Indian movement. They wouldn't even tell us the dollar amount on how much they spent on informants, and the court said that's fine. So we file an appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit. Ron Kuby and David Pressman prepared the brief. I argued the case in March of '08, and this year we got a decision. In fact, we got a decision in April of this year. And I just would like to read from what the 8th Circuit had to say. So while this court has found certain improprieties on the part of the government, they are not so severe and extensive as to create a public interest in disclosure regarding all matters related to Peltier's case. So the 8th Circuit has recognized on multiple occasions there's been all types of improprieties in the Peltier case. FOIA exemptions are not supposed to be used to shield illegal or unauthorized investigative tactics, but nonetheless, the court did this, and it's actually very intriguing because you may know President Obama, on his second day in office, sent out a memo regarding FOIA, reminding agencies that disclosure, not secrecy, was the primary feature of the act, but nonetheless, the 8th Circuit disregarded I thought Ron and David Pressman, Ron Kuby that is, and David Pressman did a wonderful job on the brief. I was able to raise a lot of arguments in the appellate court, which you can hear online. If you just do a Yahoo 8th Circuit, you can actually get to that website. You can read the decision for yourself, and you can hear the oral argument in that case. I'll just jump on and I'll open it up to questions, but the next issue had to do with the push for clemency. Back during the Clinton administration, Ramsey Clark filed a petition for clemency, and that was not acted upon during the Clinton administration, wasn't acted upon for most of the Bush administration. Well, in June of last year, I get a call from Vivienne Westwood, the fashion designer, who's actually a very big Leonard Peltier supporter. And she indicated that Bob Geldof was going to be meeting President Bush in Japan at the G8 summit. As wild as this sounds, and apparently Mr. Geldof had some type of rapport with former President Bush. So he offered to hand a letter to President Bush regarding Leonard's case. So I helped drafting this letter, which was actually handed to Ed Gillespie, who was the counsel to President Bush. He's also a wheel in the Republican Party. So he handed the letter to Gillespie in July of '08, and I actually have, I don't know if anyone got some of my handouts, but there's a few, I think, left at the table. But Gillespie gets the letter, Geldof follows up with a call to the White House, I follow up with a call, and I actually sent another copy to the White House. I then receive a letter, yeah, that's the letter in the gentleman's hand. I receive a letter from a Mr. Fielding, and let's see if I have it handy here. I'll actually read it to those. It's very brief. But actually, if you have it handy. But Mr. Fielding acknowledged receipt of my letter, and he responded back on December 12th of last year. Dear Mr. Kuzma, I'm writing to thank you for your recent letter requesting an update on Leonard Peltier's petition for commutation of his sentence. His petition is under review, and please be assured that Mr. Bob Geldof's views on this matter will be seriously considered. Sincerely, Fred F. Fielding, counsel to the President. So when we received this letter, I says, my God, Bush has been acting so erratically, maybe he'll do something right for a change. And there was an effort, I believe Pamela Anderson actually called the White House, and I was thinking, well, who knows, he might surprise us. So a few days after President Obama was sworn in, I get a call from the pardon attorney, and the pardon attorney advised me that there was breaking news on the Peltier case. And I said, wow, this President Obama sure does act quickly. And I was soon to learn that would not be the case. It was actually a call advising me that President Bush had denied this petition for clemency or commutation of sentence that had been pending since the Clinton administration. So you may ask, well, what does this mean? Now, there's two ways to get clemency in the United States. You can apply to the pardon attorney, or you can appeal directly to the president. Now, if you appeal or you apply to the pardon attorney, you have to wait 1 year after the denial. So if we apply to the pardon attorney, we cannot do so until January 27th of 2010. However, this denial does not preclude Leonard Peltier or his attorneys from appealing directly to the president. So the last thing is, people may have read or heard that Leonard was attacked in January of this year. He's currently housed in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, which I believe it's about 3 hours from here. It's halfway between Buffalo and Washington, D.C. on Route 15. But the Lewisburg facility, for the last 2 or 3 years, we've heard rumors that the facility was actually going to be emptied out and that they were going to bring the individuals who are currently housed in Guantanamo Bay, they were supposed to be brought up to Lewisburg. But they had been emptying out the prison, and Leonard was one of the few individuals who was still there, and there were rumors that something was going to happen imminently. So in January of this year, and I think it was January 12th or 11th, Leonard's transferred to the facility in Waymart, Pennsylvania, which is just east of Lewisburg. He was attacked on January 13th, and let's see, his middle finger on his left hand was broken or badly injured. He had a bump on his right wrist. His right side of his rib cage and chest were in pain, and his chest was bruised, as was his left knee, and he was also suffering from severe headaches. So the minute we learned of the attack, and no one from BOP, Bureau of Prisons, notified family. They were not notified whatsoever. So a week or so after the attack, Leonard's sister Betty, who's in Fargo, North Dakota, got a letter, and then she put alerts out on MySpace and other sites and let people know that Leonard had been attacked. I wrote a letter to the Bureau of Prisons Director Harley Lippman on January 24th, which to this date has not been responded to, and I've sent follow-up letters, and I just advised them about the attack and what were they going to do to ensure Leonard's safety. Now initially, when we learned of the attack, an attorney who lives near the prison, Sheila Dugan, who's just a wonderful person, she volunteered to go to the prison to see how Leonard was doing. Sheila was denied access to the prison. They would not allow Sheila to visit Leonard. And they said, well, Ms. Dugan's not the attorney of record. And I contacted the prison officials and indicated that Sheila was now working on the case. When Sheila was eventually allowed into the prison, the legal visit was conducted through the bulletproof glass and such, and it was, he had to hold the phone for the entire visit. So Sheila wasn't able to take notes or pass her card or do anything. And typically when we conduct legal visits with Leonard, it's in the visiting area, but there's usually, well, there's never been a barrier between us, whether it's been Lewisburg or Terre Haute or Leavenworth. So Leonard, there was a large public outcry. He was transferred back to Lewisburg, and when I went to see him last, and Sheila goes on a regular basis, it's quite convenient for her, there aren't many inmates there, but apparently I actually talked to their public affairs person, and they claim, oh, it's not becoming a supermax, it's becoming a special management facility. So what does that mean? They're bringing so-called problem inmates from around the country and putting them in Lewisburg. And if you go behind those walls, there was all kinds of construction going on. And there's still rumors that individuals from Guantanamo will be brought up to the Lewisburg facility. And just for those who might be considering going to Lewisburg next week, the prison is far removed from William Penn and 15. So if you're picketing or holding banners at the highway, you're going to be quite a distance from the prison. And if you get too close and actually say, hey, let's hold a banner in front of the prison BOP sign, they'll just swoop down on you, because I know someone who tried that. But if you have, I'll open it up to questions. I mean, I could go on and on about the missing Myrtle Poor Bear files. The files, the FBI files here in New York City have been missing since 2002. Every field office, with the exception of one or two in America, has a file relating to Leonard Peltier or Resmers. Buffalo, New York has a file relating to Leonard. I actually sued for that file, got most of it, and then I took that case to the Second Circuit, where we got handed our heads. But that was the first time the Second Circuit had been confronted with Leonard Peltier's case. And I had two so-called progressive judges on the panel. Yes? Yeah, actually there were, he went to the, if I'm not mistaken, the recreation room, and he was kicked, and he believes that two of the individuals had steel-toed boots. And one or two looked vaguely familiar from Leavenworth.
So we're only going to take about 3 more questions.
Yeah, I know we're running late too. Okay, yes.
What's the process
Well, actually, you could, if you appeal directly to the president, you could prepare a letter. I mean, John Privatera, who was involved in the case in the mid-'80s, he's done a lot of research and work on that aspect of the case. If you go through the pardon attorney, they actually have forms that you fill out. Oh, that isn't a requirement, but just to clear up some confusion, Lynn brought up the case. In Verranza's case, there was a lengthy decision, a report and recommendation was issued by the magistrate judge. I don't know if the government has filed objections to that, but in Verranza's case, he only had one life sentence. In Leonard Peltier's case, he has 2 consecutive life sentences plus a consecutive sentence of 7 years for the escape when he was in Lompoc. Now, there's talk of this mandatory release law because the feds have abolished parole. So under the statute that is applicable to Leonard and other inmates, they have to, a life sentence is 30 years. So that's how Verranza's getting out. That's how Zavanko Busick, and I hope I'm not butchering his name, last year he got out. There was a big uproar in the New York Post and the Times. And then Sarah Jane Moore, she got out. It's 4206D. The problem with Leonard's case are those consecutive sentences. And if you look at the legislative history, you have to of that statute, you have to take the 30 on the first life sentence, 30 on the second, and then 5 on the 7. Because 2/3 of the 7. So you're looking at 65 years before they have to let Leonard Peltier out under that statute. There was some confusion, and there was a belief that Leonard likes to call it the mandatory release law. He thought, hey, they have to cut me out after 30 years. But that appears not to be the case. Yes?
How do you think the situation compares with that under the last push on the
Well, what's scary, if you go to the Parole Commission website, all of those individuals on the Parole Commission are Bush appointees. In fact, the current chairperson, who was elevated by President Obama, is originally a Bush appointee. So that's disconcerting. And just so you know, initially there was, I actually learned about this parole hearing in San Francisco. Leonard's artwork was on display. But Leonard initially didn't want a parole hearing in Lewisburg. He didn't think he'd get a fair shake. His case manager, he believes, has poisoned the well. But the hearing will be held. There was an additional communication that went out that said the hearing would be held on July 27th. What's actually going to happen on the 27th of July is retired FBI, the U.S. Attorney from North Dakota, the special agent in charge from Minneapolis, they're going to go to the parole hearing, which is held right at the prison, and they're going to, just rage about Leonard, how he's a bad man and should never be let go. I had under FOIA a number of years ago got the audio portion of the last parole hearing with Jennifer Harberry and Ramsey Clark, and we got the tapes. In fact, Ramsey, I believe, and Jennifer didn't even know that the family members had come in the day before. But Jack Kohler's kid read a letter, a statement, and then Ron Williams wasn't married, so his mom is getting up in age. I don't even know if she's alive, but a retired agent came out and represented her. Then you had the U.S. Attorney from North Dakota come in, and then you had the SAC, or Special Agent in Charge, from Minneapolis. So they'll do their dog and pony show, I would suspect, on the 27th, and then on the 28th, Leonard will come in with Mr. Seitz, and I've heard that Bruce Ellison, who was at the original trial in 1977, may be at the hearing. Yes?
But I believe Carlos Alberto Torres, one of the Puerto Rican political prisoners who was not given clemency when the others were under Clinton.
Yes.
He's getting parole.
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook, and then I actually wrote a letter as well. So that is good news.
There was one more question. I saw him.
Yes. Well, right now I would recommend, Eric Seitz wants everyone to sort of keep the case in the public eye, write the letters to the parole commission. It's 550. And then actually Danny Myers is here. He's a great attorney, great person, and he actually wrote a fabulous letter on Leonard's behalf that just went out. It's a fabulous letter. I don't know, do you want to say a few words, Danny, about that?
I'm just glad that you were able to be here.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for coming out.
As an attic lawyer, I don't know how many times we drove to New York.
Yes.
It's never fun. Michael's done great work.
Thank you. But I'm willing to stick around if you have any questions. I don't bite. A little beat from that drive, but then again, I'm getting more decrepit. I turned 50 last week, so. But any questions? I'm in the phone book. I'm on Facebook. I'm on MySpace, so plenty of ways to reach me.
Thank you for that. Before we get into a little more music, I have a quick announcement about a trip to Lewisburg, a possible overnight trip to the prison for his parole hearing. And there will be a sign-up sheet, I believe it's going around. We have another song by Dave Lippman. He's a very good friend of the Leonard Peltier Support Committee.
People I will draft into being my new friends if the old ones wear out. I'll be, just mention briefly, I'll be this Thursday coming down at the Breck Center. We're going to do a benefit for some people, the native indigenous peoples of the Middle East who have been struggling and actually in a long, long, long time alliance with Native Americans. Over many, many years, worked together. About 30 years ago when I first got involved in what little I've done for the Native American struggles, and right about the time of Leonard's trial. This one comes from way up north in California, the Klamath River area. Word of mouth had traveled south. There's trouble on the river. We heard the Indians were taking a stand. Trouble on the river. Just that week, the right to fish the river was taken away by a government executive. That's the way the government determines that the Indian nation shall not live. It's the end of the month, and the rent is due. Mr. Amram's on the drum there. Make that a little louder. Want to bring that up here? We're going to have a little jam session here. Leonard will be here soon, too. Feds riding up and down, ramming boats, beating heads. There's trouble on the river. They're losing the battle. People are rising overseas. There's a trouble on the river. So they come back home and rip off some more from the original colonies. They want the native land, they want the oil. They want the native land, they want the soil. They want the trees and the tourist trade, and the native people don't get paid for their lives. It's the end of the month, and the rent is due. Mr. Interior came on down. There's trouble on the river. Took a helicopter and he took a look around. There's trouble on the river. There ain't enough fish, the man lied. Indians took him, the man lied. He said, what if you take all the salmon? I'm worried about you. You say you know what you're doing. How do I know it's true? The native elder stood up and he spoke. And he said, we are the landlords of the country. It's the end of the month. And the rent is due. That's how you know it's true. Thank you so much. David Amram on the drum kit. Thank you very much.
Excerpt, and Tiokasin wants to present this with me. This one is Dennis Banks and Wounded Knee.
Yeah. That's my introduction. Yeah. But it goes to prove that what happened after Wounded Knee and before Wounded Knee, the prior what we call the Reign of Terror happened before 1972. Years building up to that, and years after that. And when I was living on Pine Ridge, it was that tense. It was either high intensity or low intensity warfare. Terrorism that was going on against the small children to the old people. And Dennis explains a little bit about why the American Indian movement came and the treaties, and he talks a little, it's a very short 5 to 7 minute clip. Back then it's original footage.
Okay. Lights, please.
Do we need the mic on that?
Yeah, we got it.
Hold on a second.
Of the convention is to bring about some kind of guidelines, some kind of platform, and certainly to establish an international treaty commission, a commission that would seek enforcement of all of the treaties that have been signed between the United States government and the Indian tribes of North America. And hopefully through the kinds of action that the American Indian movement is proposing here at this convention, through the establishment of a treaty commission, that we will be able to stop the illegal strip mining and the robbing of natural resources. In the past 15 months, we've seen examples of where Indian people are saying that is not so. And because there have been a non-enforcement of the treaties, this is what led to the assumption that the United States government could violate at their whim, violate any time that they wanted to the articles of the treaties, the articles of contracts, the articles of agreements that have been established between Indian tribes and commissioners, agents, senators, congressmen, generals, colonels, but agents responsible to the United States government. In this country, ethnocide is taking place through an agency called the Bureau of Indian Affairs, where the BIA has assumed total responsibility to be our paternal parent, to be our landlord. But this country doesn't know how to be a landlord. And the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the BIA, has been charged with the responsibility of protecting our natural resources. They have, in fact, taken a position to join sides with Peabody Coal, Kennecott Copper, and mining interests in this country to deprive Indian people of valuable water rights. Water that in some parts of this country is so polluted that nothing lives. This treaty convention hopefully will close the door to the chapters of abuse and mistreatment. At least that's our intentions. It may develop where it will be necessary that the arms that we laid down at Wounded Knee will have to be picked up again and again, used to enforce the agreements, used to enforce the articles of problems that face Indian people here in North America. Certainly is an international problem, because we have a very unique situation here in the United States, is that we are sovereign nations, various tribes of the United States, various tribes rather in North America, that have signed treaties and agreements with this country. And through the past 2-3 centuries, the government has failed to honor those commitments. And because of those failures, Indian people here in this country suffer under a form of cultural genocide. And this genocide is a problem that a lot of countries, poor countries all across the world suffer. And we know that the United Nations, of course, dealt with genocide in 1948, but in terms of the kind of mistreatment and the abuse and the killings that go on Indian reservations by government agents, it amounts to ethnocide, where they are killing off entire tribes, where they are slowly utilizing giant machines here in this country to make this.
More from WMD Poets.
Vibes here, just beautiful. Too bad Leonard can't be here.
You'll be on next.
A couple little more readings. Any percussionists that are still in the house, this is a little heads up. I'm going to give you a signal in a little while. Doing time, creates a demented darkness of my own imagination. Doing time does this thing to you. But of course, you don't do time. You do without it. Or rather, time does you. Time is a cannibal that devours the flesh of your years, day by day, bite by bite. My crime is being an Indian. What's yours? I became increasingly involved in the spiritual side of AIM, the spiritual basis of the political work we were doing. You really can't help separate the two in Indian way. The political and the spiritual are one and the same. You can't believe one thing and then go out and do another. What you believe and what you do are the same thing. In Indian way, if you see your people suffering, helping them becomes absolutely necessary. It's not a social act of charity or welfare. It's a spiritual act, a holy deed. My life is a prayer for my people. We're not supposed to be perfect. We're supposed to be useful. Okay. All of you percussionists, that's everybody. Everybody has percussion in some kind. So this is my favorite passage from Leonard's book. I love going out in bad weather. It amazes me how we learn to call a rainstorm bad. There's nothing more beautiful than a storm, something you rarely get to experience and hear, other than vaguely hearing the thunder shuddering through the thick stone walls as you lie in your cell without even a window to the world outside. There are times I'd give anything just to go out walking in a storm, feeling the wind blow right through me, soaking up the rain and the thunder and the lightning in the flesh, feeling a oneness with the great mystery. Being out in storms was something I always loved as a boy. All that thunder and lightning spoke to me. I used to go out walking in it. They say you can hear Crazy Horse's voice in the thunder if you just listen hard. Thank you all you percussionists, and thank you everyone for being here. Let's send some thunder to Leonard. This is for you, Leonard. Be home soon. Take this thunder out into the world and spread it. Thank you, everyone.
A short talk by Lynne Stewart.
Nothing that we can be called upon to do that would be too much because of Leonard and what he did and how he stood up all these years. I'm going to tell you a short story about a client of mine, a client for whom I was once famous and now I'm notorious. That is Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman was housed a few cells down from Leonard at the Springfield Medical Facility. And the sheikh was calling us and was telling us that they would flood his cell. And, you know, and he would get up, and because he's blind, he'd put his feet down into this wet, and it was shocking to him. And, of course, Ramsey Clark, who was our point person, figuring even a superintendent of a prison will talk to an ex-attorney general, made the phone call and said, you know, your guards are harassing our client, they're flooding his cell. And the superintendent said, that's not happening. I don't know where you get your information. That's completely crazy. My men wouldn't do that. That is not happening. A few days later, Ramsey, who had represented Leonard also, and if you had gone to Ramsey's office any time in the last 10 years, you would see the beautiful painting of Leonard that is the weeping Navajo woman in purple. But he called Ramsey, Leonard did, and said, you know, these guards are throwing water in the cell of your client every morning. And then when he complains, they tell him he's crazy. Now that's solidarity, folks. That's reaching out when you don't have to reach out. That's aligning yourself with the least popular people in the prison, probably, and a person that certainly was not gaining much sympathy. But Leonard, of course, understood that this is one struggle. And even though you may not agree with other people's tactics, you may not agree. When you're in prison, it's them and us, and that is it. So I can't say that I will say that this outpouring tonight is very much in the spirit of Leonard. Even the poor man's auction, which maybe was messy, is kind of like the things we want to do when people are free and we don't have to think about, will I be able to get up tomorrow and get to that demonstration? Will I make it to this the next week? I'm feeling a slightly unhinged because my better half, my good Ralph, is not with me tonight. I pulled a substitute. My best friend from when I was 16 in high school in Queens came with me tonight. Ralph is resting up. He's getting radiation, but he's getting better, too. So we hope when this radiation is over in maybe 3 or 4 more weeks, he will be on the road back, and we all know how formidable Ralph can be. So in closing, I just want to say that we must prevent what happened to Veronza Bowers from happening to Leonard. If you don't know this story, this is really something that it hasn't been made public, really, because it hasn't reached the ears of the movement at the request of the lawyers who are handling the parole case of Veronza. I'm not going to comment on that. I'm a great believer in bringing the people into the case, but It was written up in the Washington Post, not once, but twice, about how Verranza, when he was all set to be released from federal prison, was suddenly told, "You're not getting released. You're here." And it turned out that there was skullduggery afoot, which does not come as a large surprise to us who have monitored the Bush administration, but this really comes over and above what you would even expect. And it had to do with one member of the Parole Commission who went to Alberto Gonzales, then the Attorney General, so as to speak, and who informed him that this man should never be free. He cannot be free, she told him. And Alberto, doing what is really not allowable under law, surprise, surprise, put in a little marker on this case saying not to be released. And Verranza was not released. And what was the reason that was given underlying this? Apparently, there was a short memo which said, if he is released, he, who was a Black Panther, who did allegedly murder a park ranger in San Francisco in 1970, he will go back to doing what he always did. And we can't have people out there organizing our youth, taking over the neighborhoods and going back and raising these issues once again. So many of our heroes from the 60s and the 70s that are in jail today have got to be recognized by us as the true heroes, as the people who have the inside knowledge of those days. I think we need to honor them, we need to fight for them, we need to get them out of jail. We have to bring them home.